Welcome to the David Spizak Show. I am David Spizak, and I'm absolutely so thankful to have you here with us today. I'm so proud and pleased to introduce you to Rusty West. And Rusty, as I shared with him on the last time we had a conversation, this is something that I've wanted to have happen for a very long time. You see, I've been in this business, as most of you know, in the retail automotive industry. I've been in the business for over 45 years. I've been an entrepreneur longer than that. And both as somebody who loves the retail auto industry and as somebody who loves being an entrepreneur, this is somebody that I have long respected and admired. Why? Well, if you go way back in time, I turned out that I was one of the early customers of Rusty West's product, Lease Profit, before I ever knew who the heck he was, and he certainly didn't know who I was. But I'll get into that in a second. But before I do, I really just want to, first and foremost, welcome Rusty to today's interview. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while as well. So,
thank you. And you know, we've run into each other for years. And it's funny how this industry works, Rusty, that there's people that have also been in the industry for 25, 30, 40 years. And that I've long since known in some form or fashion, right? Maybe just met them in passing or had some conversations at a NADA conference or something, but never really got to have a very deep conversation and ask a lot of questions that I've had curiosity about for a long time. And so, you know, you're right there at the top of that list. As I mentioned, longtime customer, started with Lease Profit back in the beginning, 1991. And by the way, a gentleman who I still work with today, wonderful guy, wonderful dealer, Todd Bondi, you know, used to work with you back in Sacramento. I've known Todd for, the same time, probably the better part of 30 years. And he always spoke so fondly of his time at Lease Profit. But I want to get into Lease Profit's ultimate transformation into Market Scan and how Market Scan in turn literally transformed the industry into what we're all used to today, with people being able to go online, shop, select, and be able to have confidence that when they see a payment, right, penny perfect payment, we'll talk about that too, that it's all because of Market Scan. But before I do that, if you'll indulge me, please, just so for people that are not familiar with you and what you've done in this world, not just business, I want to start out with saying you ended up going, of all places, University of Western Georgia for school, right?
Yeah, University of Western. Yeah, in Carrollton. So
you were raised in Atlanta?
Yeah, I was born in Houston, Texas, and I was a baby when we moved to Atlanta, like 2, I think, or something. And I grew up in Atlanta and graduated from West Georgia in '88. All technology stuff. I got degrees in mathematics, computer science, and physics. Probably would have been good for me to take a business class back then, but yeah, I graduated
it worked out.
In '88. And,
yeah. It worked out. It did okay.
Yeah. My business education was a little bit more painful than the collegiate route. Well, but it was effective. I'll give it that. So,
a 4-year academic degree and a 20-year business degree. Is it fair to say?
Yeah, right. 30-something years, and I'm still learning. So
you took more of the Tommy Boy approach to the business degree.
Yeah,
right?
No kidding.
Tommy Boy famously took 7 years to get his 4-year degree. Well, it worked out, and it worked out so well, and we're going to circle back to we're going to get into the Market Scan piece as well as some other things I think people are going to find incredibly interesting. But there's a couple of things I think that's really important at the outset. To me, it really struck me. You know, one of the things as I was getting ready to chat with you here was I come across, of all things, you know, that incredibly global, fantastic global publication from the University of Western Georgia, right, where they put out their own news, as most colleges do. And I happened to come across an article where you were given an honorary doctorate. And I want you to touch on that. I'm asking this question because when anybody goes through college, you start out in your working career, you don't know how things are going to end. You really don't. You go in with best intentions. You certainly had designs or, some kind of concepts, perhaps most of us have, of what we want our life to turn out to be. I'm so curious on what was it like when you found out that you were going to be granted such a tremendous honor from the very university you graduated from?
It was kind of surreal, to be honest with you. I've done a lot of projects with my school over the years, and I'm in the middle of working on a big project with them now. It was a surprise. I'm very proud of it. It's not like I've got I'm not going to work on anybody's medically, right? Not that kind of a doctor, but it was very cool to be recognized. And a lot of it was from a lot of the kind of behind the scenes philanthropic work that we've done and that kind of stuff is where most of the recognition came from. But yeah, it was super cool. So
I love anytime I read stories or I love reading about entrepreneurs or anybody that's achieved something great but stayed connected to the humanity side of life, which you always have. And Jensen Huang, for example, at NVIDIA, of course, the fact that you create a company like NVIDIA, that's pretty impressive. You grow it into $1 trillion company. Okay, that's very impressive. What's even more impressive to me is he didn't forget where he came from. He didn't forget that, they immigrated here, and he started out in a school in Kentucky and goes over to Oregon State when they moved over to Oregon, then to Stanford. And, once things started going really, really well, one of the first things he did was to do philanthropic work and give back to both of those universities, not just Stanford, because Stanford obviously glows, but also to Oregon State. And I love the fact that you've continued to have that relationship. In other words, when you got your degree, it didn't end there. It ends for most people. As soon as you get the degree, it's like, all right, I'm gone, I'm off. It's like you left moving out of the house. You don't want to move back in the house.
Right.
You saw that differently. What is it that made you want to stay connected? What is it that impacted you so much in that university? What or who that made you want to stay so much connected, continue to have that connection as you moved on in your career?
Yeah, so it wasn't a what, it was a who. It was Dr. James Earl Perry, who was a math professor. I took every class I could from him. He was also the faculty advisor to our fraternity, which means he probably should have been a liver surgeon, right? But when I first got to college, I was a bit of a mess and into a lot of stuff I shouldn't be into. I was very into everything that was fun, and I was not into anything that was academic. And almost didn't get invited back after the first semester. And he literally pulled me aside after the first week of class, the first class I took with him, and he called me out. What the hell are you doing in my class? Why are you wasting my time? And I'm like, well, dude, what are you talking about? He's like, you have the ability to do well if you'd apply yourself, but you aren't willing to apply yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, don't waste my time. Don't come back Monday. And, be perfectly frank, I was young and stupid and it really pissed me off. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let this guy win. I'm going to go back Monday. And
you'll show him.
Huh? Yeah, I'm going to show him.
You show him.
He pulled me aside Monday and he says, all right, well, you came back. He says, are you willing to work or are you just going to be a little punk? I said, I'll work. And he ended up being my mentor all through college. And so we remained pretty close shortly after graduation. As life goes on, you kind of separate. I reconnected back with him a bunch of years ago. And then unfortunately, several years ago, he passed away. And I went to his funeral, which he's buried in the middle of nowhere, Climax, Georgia, which nobody knows where that is. And then when I sold the business, I'd been talking with the school for a couple of years, saying that, if I ever have a big liquidity event, I want to do something to honor Earl. And so we did. And I kind of, and obviously this is a public broadcast, but anonymously, we did a College of Mathematics, Computing, and Sciences named after Dr. James Earl Perry. And it's a It's a 137,000 square foot building that we're remodeling in his honor. So, he pretty much.
So he lives on in a big, big way.
Absolutely,
In a big way.
And I'm not the only one. I mean, there's a million stories like me out there from professors and caring people all over this great country. But he had one of those profound impacts on me, and I wanted to be able to say thanks in a big way. And we're going to be doing a ribbon cutting here, I think, beginning of next year, which has been a long time coming. But yeah, it's been a great project, and he was an unbelievable guy.
Well, obviously, it's just a tremendous act of honor and respect, and to think all of that started with a dude that was going off the rails a bit, going down the wrong path of life. Yeah. And how extraordinary that you have people out there in the world, Rusty, that with all of that mess, all he saw was your potential. Isn't that crazy? For all the mess, he saw, it's like somebody who goes up and buys a business or a house, and somehow they see something nobody else saw. Yeah. And he saw that. And it's almost like somehow, some way that caused combustion. It lit a fuse in you. And that still is alive now, right?
It is weird. I've been very blessed. I've had three really good mentors in my life. My dad was one, obviously. We were very close. We started Market Scam together. I had a boss for a long time. All through high school and college, I worked at a car stereo shop called American Radio. And my boss was a guy named Scott Fricker. And Scott and I are still really good friends. Actually, when I got my received the honorary doctorate just a few months ago, Scott came out to the college for that, which was really fun. But he was a great guy. And then Earl was kind of the last mentor I had, so.
How fortunate any and all of us are who, the great Jim Rohn always said, right, you become the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. 100%. You spend the most time with, and how fortunate to be able to get exposed to those people and go out and meet those people, but even more fortunate when those people actually say, I know maybe you didn't pick me, I'm here. Right? I'm just gonna jump into what, like Dr. Earl just said, I'm taking one of those 5 spots. You could do what you want with the other 4. Yeah. So pretty incredible. Also when you speak about philanthropy, I mentioned Wings and Warriors, and that is something that also is equally near and dear to your heart. And that is, if I'm understanding correctly, is providing treatment, PTSD treatment, and suicide prevention for veterans. Is that accurate?
Yeah, veterans, first responders, and law
first responders.
Exactly.
That's right, law enforcement. Where did that come from? Where did the idea come from? Where did the inspiration come from? I bought a house in Leander, Texas, next door to a guy who I became very close friends with. His name's Tim Scher. Tim's a 26 or 7 year career Delta pilot. And he was flying one before that. He started an organization called Wheels and Warriors about 9 years ago. And it's all car community to raise money for the same cause. As you know, I'm a car junkie, which is a little bit of a problem, but I love it. And Tim is too. So we hit it off right away. And I started helping him with the Wheels and Warriors thing. And then, we're like, if we did an air show, like a full-blown air show, we could raise a lot of money. And maybe not the first year, but if we could build a business out of it, we could save a bunch of lives. And so that was the path we went down. And unfortunately, this year didn't work out because the government shutdown, killed our show this year. But we have the contract with the airport for 9 more years, so we're going to make a run of it. So wonderful. When you think about obviously you shared some really profound things from your college experience. When you think about Wings and Warriors, is there something in particular, one moment, one person that strikes you that says, I knew this was the right thing to do. I know this is something I want to dedicate, a good part of my life to?
It kind of goes back a lot further than that, right? I got involved early on in Southern California with the 1199 Foundation. 1199 is a code for officer down, and it is a foundation that basically gives back to the families of CHP officers who've been either severely injured or killed in the line of duty.
1199?
1199, yes, sir.
Yeah, I supported 1199 for over a decade.
Oh, yeah. So Bruce Meyer was one of the founders of it. I met Bruce a bunch of years ago, and so I got involved with it. And I kind of always had this concept of, there's a Texas. I want to try and do something maybe similar on a national scale, but not just for police, right? So military, police, and first responders. And I wanted to do something, but at the time, I wasn't really in a position where I could focus on it because I had so much going on professionally with market scan. And it was, the last couple of years, actually, the last 35 years with market scan were a lot of work, right? But it was fun work. But so once I got out here and I found out what Tim was doing, I was like, okay, well, this is a very, very similar cause. And he's already got it going, and he's become one of my closest friends I've ever had. Right, and I'm 60, so you can I've had some pretty good friends along the way. But so I love the cause, I love the energy, I love the purity of it. Right, you got a whole bunch of wonderful people in the organization. None of them take a salary. Everybody volunteers their time. So I was like, hey, if we do this, what's your thoughts on maybe expanding the scope? My long-term vision was, the biggest thing we deal with is PTSD treatment and suicide prevention, right? And if we can get with the right organizations, I don't want to be an expert at any of them. I want to surround ourselves with the best pure organizations, not the ones where they bring $100 million in and the CEO gets 90, right? We want the ones where they bring $60 million in and $59 million of it goes to saving lives. The other $1 million goes to running all the rest of the stuff, right? So, but I wanted to do that not just with PTSD treatment, but job placement. There's a million things that these guys deal with when they exit the military, they exit the police, they exit the fire department. So wanted to try and solve a bunch of pain points, right?
And is there one impact story that comes to your mind, like one specific person or moment that really captures why this mission matters and what's possible when aviation or wheels becomes kind of a path to healing?
There's one big one for Tim. Tim started Wheels and Warriors. He was flying back from somewhere. He's a Delta pilot, so he travels all over the place. And he gets a message. Obviously, they have Wi-Fi on the plane. He gets a message that his house had been struck by lightning and was on fire. And it wasn't a little bit of a fire. It burned to the ground. He gets here. There's all these first responders who are running into a flaming home, grabbing his dad's dog tag, flag that was over his dad's casket. Just stuff, right? And it's like, God, these people don't know who I am. They're risking their lives for our stuff. So he kind of got involved with doing a bunch of stuff with the Gary Sinise Foundation. Sure. That foundation, and Gary Sinise does incredible work, but it's very, very well funded. So he met some people that run an organization called Save a Warrior, and they were getting going, doing great, great work, very, very pure, a lot of volunteers. And so the money that he's raised over the last several years has all gone towards the Save a Warrior Foundation, which when I got involved with them, we did the same thing. I met a couple people through that organization. One of them, I'm not going to say his name because he don't like me to talk about him, but he's an ex-Special Forces guy, and he was in Iraq and stepped on an IED and blew him up in the air and blew his left leg off, threw him across the street. He landed on another one, and it went off and blew his right leg off. Right? He's like, when you think you're having a really shitty day, your day even gets worse, right? And most people would, couldn't handle that, right? This guy jumps out of airplanes with 2 prosthetics and his dog, because he's got a dog trained to jump out of airplanes still, and he's a never say die guy. I've got a couple of very, very good friends, one in particular who was a Navy SEAL for 32 years, was the longest active Navy SEAL we ever had. And when he exited, he had a very, very difficult time transitioning, So a lot of the work that we're doing has been kind of driven by those two guys. They graciously gave their entire professional life defending our freedoms, and Chris lost both of his legs. My other buddy almost lost his life half a dozen times, and so being able to get back to those guys is an honor and a privilege.
Boy, I get chills. I'm so taken with that. I served in the Navy. I was not one of those guys. I was not one of those heroes. I wasn't put in a position during a war. We were on a ship during the Iran hostage crisis, but your ships are way out in the ocean. You're not in the middle of it. And, I've met so many people that were in the thick of it. And one of the things that just strikes you about all of them, several of them, no regrets, incredible pride, and it was all about the service. It was never about the recognition. It was about the service and the fact that many of them still serve today. So many of those veterans are looking for a way to serve today. I also had supported one year, had the opportunity to support one of the Navy SEAL Foundation events. And you think as just an average Joe out in the street, that these Navy SEALs that are out there, you think of the Rangers, the SEALs, Green Beret, and you think, these are the toughest of the tough, right? These guys are going to come out of the service and the world should be their oyster at that point with everything they've put in. And I come to find out how much these guys struggle, because the incredible skill sets they have, as incredible they are, they don't translate to just an average business at all. Yeah. And so can you imagine going out and dedicating your life and being the best of the best at what you do, and you go out there and it's like, I have no skills whatsoever. And they've got to find a bridge to be able to connect those incredible skills, that grit they had, that courage they had, that commitment they had, discipline they had, and be able to help them transform and reinvent into another chapter in their life. And if without any and all of us trying to make some kind of an effort, it's just a shame that they literally put so much in to serve this country. And certainly they deserve any and all support we can give them. So, man, I just have profound respect for what you and your friends are doing in that respect.
Well, thanks. It is a challenge. These guys, you said it very well. They have a very, very specific skill set, and these guys do it very well. I've got another buddy of mine who was another SEAL team guy who was a sniper, and he was one of the best snipers our military ever had. He transitioned into being an entrepreneur and just killed it. But he had to learn, right? Because as a civilian, the sniper business isn't that great, right? Or maybe it is. I don't know. No. But
what are you going to show up at an interview? Yeah. Do you need anybody shot? Who is it? Where are they? Are they 500 yards away?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Showed up, right? Everybody else got dumped. But those guys have a tough one. Another really interesting community that has a difficult time transitioning is the fighter pilots. Right? These F-18, F-35, F-22 guys who are used to going faster than the speed of sound and shooting people. When they get out, they nothing spins their wheels, right? Flying a 767 isn't the same thing.
Yeah, it's not
just like I'm driving a school bus as opposed to racing a Formula One car, right? It's not quite the same thing. So we've done had a lot of conversations with a lot of those guys. Obviously, we work with a bunch of them, putting on an air show. You got to get to know all of them, and what a super cool community these guys are. But a lot of the ones who are exiting in the same boat, they're like, I'm terrified. I don't know what I'm going to do, and that's one of the reasons why we want to work on helping getting them some training and some transition help as well.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And certainly, if, anybody that goes to my website, davidspizak.com, I'll make sure that we put in the show notes information on how they can learn more about Wings and Warriors, Wheels and Warriors, and other ways that they can help support these incredible veterans, these true heroes that walk amongst us, or exist amongst us, for those like your dear friend who lost both of his legs. I want to pivot over to another subject, obviously, that was a big part of your life, market scan, lease profit and market scan. So, I want to start out the lease profit side. And at some point, I want to know why lease profit became market scan. At some point, did lease profit plateau, or did something happen to where you figured out, okay, we're going to have to pivot, or there's going to be some challenges?
September 11th. September 11th happened. The automotive industry literally just got put on pause for a few minutes. And then once it kind of opened back up, every manufacturer came out with 0% financing, and leasing just stopped. So we had a fantastic product for a vertical that almost overnight evaporated. And
do you remember how many clients you had at that time when the world changed? How many?
We had roughly 5,700 rooftops.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So you had over a quarter of the industry.
Well, we did, but we also had our customers were responsible for 86% of all leases written in the country, right? And we had everybody who was doing any leasing. And we had all the lending institutions using the product, and the OEMs were using it. And it was, it was kind of like having the only ice water stand in the Sahara Desert, right, at the time.
Yeah.
And we didn't have much competition. But when September 11th happened, we're sitting there, we got all these rooftops. Our business model was very flawed in that we sold off all of our receivables to a third party. And my dad always ran the business side, I did the tech side. And my dad, bless his heart, was an unbelievable car guy and was one of the pioneers of leasing. But for him, everything was a car deal, right? So we sold all of our paper off as an equipment lease. And so we had all this obligations and a product that nobody wanted.
Boy, you could not. It's crazy. Holy cow! I could literally. It's almost palpable. I could feel as you're saying that as an entrepreneur. I've been in similar situations, but could you imagine anybody listening? You put in your heart and soul into something. So this is 1990. So this is 13 years in, but this is 13 years post launch of Lease Profit. You get probably in a period of 10 years, you're talking about an average of 600 clients a year, almost 6,000 clients, and you're crushing it. Things are going great. No end in sight. All of a sudden, literally in a singular moment, and obviously, again, we're talking about veterans. You talk about all this, the tragedy of 9/11, but in that moment, obviously, businesses were changed forever. There were businesses, there were airlines that nearly went out of business. There were airlines that ultimately couldn't survive. My friend was the head of operations for United. 6 months later, the guy didn't have a job, and didn't have a job for years because of the age he was at the time. He's, near the pinnacle, and all of a sudden, he's back to square one. There were so many of these stories that you don't hear about, and yours is one of them. But all of a sudden, literally, it changes in a blink of an eye. What happens? You have all of a sudden the receivable thing was no problem. It was great. Now it's a problem.
So
right?
The receivable thing was interesting, right? Because when you sell off all your receivables, you have a war chest, but you don't have any income coming in. Unless you continue to sell off the contracts. So we had, which was okay for a little bit, right? But we had $100 million or so worth of product out there that customers are like, we can't use this. And we had an unbelievable development team. And we got the best of the best from all over the world. I think one time I had 15 or 20 H-1B visas going, right? I had people from literally Bulgaria, Japan, China, the Philippines. I didn't care where they came from. If they were the best of the best of the best in the languages that we were using, we brought them in. So we sat down and we're like, okay, we have to pivot, right? We have to solve another problem, right? And then my philosophy has always been your compensation is directly proportionate to the level of difficulty of the problem you solve, right? Or capable of solving. So we got to go find a big problem. And the problem at that point then became, okay, we got financing, we got subprime financing, we got 0% financing with massive rebates. And then all of a sudden we got a bunch of people who are way upside down. Right, because when 0% financing comes out, people are like, well, I only owe this much on your car. Your vehicle's not worth that much if the payment on it as a used product is more than getting a brand new one. So when you have these big minus equities, then you have another problem solved. So we went after the retail side. Prime, subprime, balloon notes, cash purchases, didn't matter, trying to figure that kind of stuff out. And so that's when we went from calling it lease profit to market scan, because we were no longer dealing with just leasing. We were dealing with every type auto transaction. And we had to figure that out. We figured that out.
Do you remember what day that was? Do you literally remember what day that was?
September 15th, maybe. I mean, it was
golly. So I mean, you didn't
our
wait.
Business stopped. We had, once people kind of got back into the office, so to speak. I mean, there was a few days where the whole country was numb, right? Once people kind of got back into the office, I had thousands of phone calls. Hey, we want to cancel. Like, you can't read your contract. It's sold. Right. Let me get you another product you can use. And we didn't want to drop anybody in the hot grease. That's not who we are. But, it's not my fault that leasing stopped. And so we did. We came out, we wrote a CRM solution, a service analysis, a marketing module, showroom control kiosks, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we had this whole, and we did it in a period of like 7 months. But we had this whole environment where salespeople could meet a customer on the showroom floor, scan their driver's license, get them to sign for a credit application, and give it to the sales manager, and go take them for a test drive. Never leave them unattended. Never touch the desk. Go do their thing, and the sales manager could desk the deal. And when they came back, here's your lease options, your finance options, cash purchase, multi-pence and stuff.
I remember.
Negotiation back and forth, all electronic. We had to do something different. And
you ever think about, Rusty, how, I mean, it's kind of, again, interesting how life works, but what you just shared is digital retailing, right? 100%. It was digital retailing before the words digital retailing ever were uttered from anybody's mouth. It's crazy. I mean, I'm talking a better part of, golly, nearly 15 plus years before digital retailing was ever said by anybody. It's pretty crazy that that's the way. I mean, do you ever sit there and think, was it a matter in your mind that you guessed right? Or was it a matter of mind that you just, one of the quotes I happen to see from you, and you just alluded to it, is you recommended during your conversation when you got that honorary doctorate, find the biggest problems in your field and solve them. Yeah. And in your mind, was that what you saw? In other words, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're just going to sit there and go, okay, what's the quickest fix? Not what's the biggest problem I could solve, but what's the quickest fix that I could Band-Aid, stop the hemorrhaging? In your mind, you went, no. That's not going to work. I need to figure out what is the biggest problem now that leasing is over here. What's the biggest problem? Is that kind of the approach you took?
Yeah, that's exactly the approach I took. Right, I had a whole bunch of unhappy customers, and I became rather unpopular in the space for a little bit, right? Because it was one of those. Listen, you can pay and be happy, or you can pay and be unhappy, but the constant is you have to pay. That's the transaction. That's the contract you sign. That's what it was, right? So let me figure out how to make you happy, right? And I sat down with a bunch of dealers. My whole team would go sit, and we had 300 something employees, right? So it's like, go sit down, learn find out what their pain points are. Let's see how many of them we can bundle up and solve, right? The one thing we knew we could do was we could crank out great software really quickly, right? We always were able to do that. So we did. I sat down with a bunch of people. One of them was in Gastonia, North Carolina. It was our first big install, was Earl Tyndall Ford. And I remember going to do the install because it was the very first commercial flight I took after September 11th. There's a whole nother story there, but I missed my connecting flight. And my connecting flight was the second plane that went in. So wow. Yeah, I was a little nervous about flying on commercial flights for a while. And so anyway, we sat down with all these people and we learned as much as we could learn, and we just built stuff. And it worked, and the product was good. It's not a space I would ever want to enter again. The CRM space is cut out for people who have more patience than I do. It's a whole different art. I mean, we have this great product, and we had this whole graphical user interface where you could drag a kiosk onto onto this board, right? And then it built the database and all the stuff behind it. And then, when the kiosk happened and stuff would go to different places, you just dropped icons on and you tied everything together and graphically, right? So it was awesome. But
so also, I have to point out, it sounds like one of the earliest executions of object-oriented approaches to programming versus old school programming, right? And I don't mean to geek out, but I can't help it. I'm a geek. Yeah. And so I remember the first time I just really got exposed to object-oriented, which of course early was Steve Woz and Steve Jobs with Mac, but then Steve Jobs took it to a whole different level with the Next computer. If you remember the Next computer,
I had one.
I had one too, an 030 Cube. I had the 30 Cube and black and white one, not the color one. But still, when you got exposed to that, your brain just exploded with what you could do. And so I find life so extraordinary because everything that happened in your life. I don't know if you ever read that book. Was The Tipping Point is Malcolm Gladwell's book, and talking about how Steve Jobs, Larry Ellison, and Bill Gates were all born within about a year or so apart. And if those minds would have been born 2 years later or 2 years before, if they hadn't had professors that let them use big computers that kids at that time were not allowed to use, certain things had to line up in addition to a little bit of luck, in addition to somebody who was very passionate, had some brains, but you needed all of that. You sound like a poster child for that. It sounds like everything you're sharing is kind of like, you talk about Dr. Earl, and then you have your dad, growing up there, and you have him as a great car guy, as an influence, and everything that happened to you is so interesting. It's almost like you were designed to be able to respond and react in every way. And what you just said, obviously, is a huge part of that. So is that where Penny Perfect came from? So, Rusty?
Penny Perfect came before, way back, 1974.
Holy cow.
I was 9, right? So clearly I wasn't doing any programming back then. My dad was probably one of, if not the main pioneer of auto leasing to the U.S. And he, in the 60s, wrote Ford's RLP, which was called Retail Lease Plan, which is a red carpet lease.
Red carpet leasing, yeah. Half a car, yeah.
Yeah, and that goofy formula that they used was my dad's brainchild. So he had a guy, Mark Singleton, wrote a software package for him right after he graduated from Georgia Tech on a Wayne computer for my dad's first independent leasing company, which was called Penny Leasing Systems. And in 1974, he used to advertise Penny Perfect Payments because back then nobody knew how to lease, so they'd guess, and your payment by the time you went to sign something wasn't remotely close to what you got quoted. We kind of got back to that for a little bit.
Gotta love car people.
That's a whole other story. But yeah, so 74, that's where that came from. And when we came out with our software, penny perfect payments was just something we adopted from Penny Leasing Systems. So,
But penny perfect payments, the one thing that survived after that massive shift in the industry where leasing got decimated, the one thing that walked away and survived was the term penny perfect payment, which lives on today, right?
Yeah, there's a ton of elements to it. Yeah, obviously, leasing's way more complex than a finance or cash, but even financing, right? Even a cash purchase transaction in certain markets is very complex. California is one of them, right? The sales tax is easy to calculate because they tax you on absolutely everything in California. But registration fees are very complex and are very, very specific down to the city, county, zip code.
That's right.
There's 3 different
type of vehicle. Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, and weight and all kinds of stuff, right?
All of it.
For us, the ability to calculate not just the payment, but every single element of the transaction that is required in order to document and deliver this vehicle was important. And in order to do that, we had to track 4 classes of data, right? We had to track the lender, the manufacturer, the municipality, and the dealership, right? So, we track every parameter, policy, and factor that can influence any lease, finance, balloon, cash purchase transaction from those 4 classes. And it put us in a position where we could do stuff exactly like we needed to. And then when the world fell apart in 2005, my dad passed away. 2006, the business was almost gone. And then by the time 2007 hit, we had 200 or 300 rooftops, and that was it. But we had this great technology, so we started saying, if we can't beat them, join them, and started powering other companies, and the rest is history.
And forgive my brain, it's I'm sure peculiar by most people's standards. It tends to, as people are sharing things, it immediately goes out and grabs other things, and perhaps a very rudimentary, poor form of AI, as it were. But as you're saying that, one of the things that strikes me is, over in France a few months ago, and of course Notre Dame was burned down, a good part of it, and they had to be rebuilt. And one of the things that was interesting to me was it was rebuilt using the same exact approaches and processes, Rusty, they used when it was originally built. It's not like they came in with modern construction, started throwing in a bunch of steel beams. And the thing that occurred to me, and often occurs to me when you go to places overseas, you go to Greece, go to these different places where the world is so much older than the United States. And these buildings that stand today after, hundreds or thousands of years. And I sit there and think, man, could we, with all of our modern systems, actually build what those guys built without anything? I mean, they had nothing, and they built these flawless buildings. If you go back and some of these things are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and you think, golly, how'd they build that? And what you built, I'm drawing a parallel here, because what you built, this sounds, all you got to do is, so you need to understand the dealer situation. You have to understand, the government side, right? The DMV side, the way that they calculate things. Oh, by the way, every OEM's different. Oh, by the way, every finance program is different. Oh, by the way, the lenders are all different. But what you do is just get all that stuff together, put it together, and then you're going to end up with a penny perfect payment. Wrong. It just doesn't work that way. There's a whole lot. There's probably a few million lines of code, to say the least, at the least, to be able to make all of that look easy. And I think the brilliance of Lease Profit, to me, when we first got it, is I could focus and we could focus on the client, on the experience, and providing the best experience and providing them what they wanted, which was to get a great vehicle at a great payment. Never once did I have to question or even think about, okay, is this the right rate? Is this the right money factor? Is this the right residual? So not once. And even as a month flipped over and programs changed, bam, my Lease Profit was perfect. And so we saw the same thing, obviously, during Market Scan. I have to ask you, it changed, literally has changed the way. Here's something else for you to think about, and I'm sure you have at some point, but it literally changed the way that OEMs and dealers understand pricing and incentives and how those things are leveraged. as you look ahead, maybe 3, 4, 5 years out, what do you believe is going to be the single biggest transformation in how automotive data is used? And is there anything that either dealers or manufacturers are perhaps underestimating?
There's a popular answer to that, and there's an unpopular answer.
I want the unpopular one.
Yeah. So
therein lies the truth.
I think is more realistic. Retailing is going to go almost completely online. The average consumer doesn't go to the store often, right? I don't know how many times the smiley face Amazon box shows up at your house.
It's not a smile, my friend. It's world domination.
Right? We probably have 4 days a month that something doesn't show up here, right? And the rest of the time, it's
same.
everything, USB cables, the stuff, right? Amazon's getting into the automotive space, and they're getting it in a big way. Market Scan is the calculation engine behind all the payments. Now, the beautiful thing about that ecosystem is that the dealers are still in control over dictating the terms and conditions under which they want to transact. They're just a retailer on a different platform. So I think the dealers who embrace the kind of new frontier are going to be the ones that own the market. Those who don't are going to maybe not survive, or going to become fulfillment centers, right? So there's going to be some consolidation. There's been a bunch of consolidation over the years anyway, but there'll be some consolidation. The other thing that I think will happen, I hope happens, once we got to where we had all of the data electronically, right? So that's the biggest problem we solved wasn't necessarily calculating the payments properly. That was a big problem, but it was figuring out how do we aggregate this data electronically, as opposed to having 200 people in the Philippines manually doing it, taking 6 days and getting it wrong, right? We had hundreds of millions of lines of code that we wrote to aggregate data electronically. So when stuff was released, it was in our system, right? And that's why we were so accurate. There was a huge focus on analytics, because if you know exactly what the payments look like from everybody, what the payments look like, not just from the lenders and manufacturers and municipalities from a tax perspective, but also what they look like based on what the dealerships are willing to sell these vehicles for, how are they willing to transact, then you know exactly what the market truly looks like. And if you know what the market looks like, if you're a manufacturer or lender and you want to position yourself properly in the marketplace, you can do it for the exact right price. You don't have to be $200 a month cheaper than the next best guy to win the business, when $10 a month will get it done, and you're not leaving $190 a month in profit off the table, right? Or on the table. So I think you'll see a much more competitive landscape from all the players, except for the governmental agencies, right? The tax authorities never try to be competitive; they just try to charge what they can. But from a lender, a manufacturer, a dealer, and a marketplace perspective, I think there'll be a lot more analytics that go into it. I think you'll see a ton of AI that takes advantage of the information that we collect, or Market Scan collects. Obviously, I'm not a part of it anymore, but and I think you'll see a big shift towards doing things more online ahead of time.
Rusty, do you think for all those reasons that you just shared, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, wouldn't it then make sense, be logical, that those that are in, frankly, the best position as we move forward to what is ultimately going to become the reality of that? And this certainly does not mean, hey, for anybody out there, we're not saying dealers are going away. We're saying dealers are probably going to go away that don't, as always, that don't respond and react effectively to what customers' expectations become. But doesn't that mean that those who hold the most data are going to be in a premier position, whether that's a publicly owned company, whether it's a Carvana, whether it's an Amazon? Because, when you think about Carvana, the general, what tends to dominate the thinking is that these guys, they have access to a lot more inventory than the typical dealership can get, right? And that certainly is an advantage. They have some cost efficiencies. That's an advantage. But another huge advantage is what you just pointed out. I mean, they're not doing 50 cars a month or 100 cars a month, right? They're not just in one street or one market or even one region. They're all over the country. They can see so deep into micro trends. They can leverage data at such a level, so much depth, that they literally, it will steer them in the direction. For example, CarMax got rid of 551,000 cars using an auction they created. And why would a company that desperately needs every car they can get rid of 551,000 cars? Well, data is telling me this is not going to be a happy ending for me. This is not the car somebody wants to buy. This is a car that's going to be unprofitable, right? And so they're going to sell them. Who do they sell them to? Dealers. And dealers, meanwhile, if you look it up, 10% of the cars CarMax sold came from dealers. So those were cars that, according to the data, were flawless when it comes to a retail perspective, what customers wanted. And so it's very interesting. It just shows you some insights. And don't you think, obviously, a king of data, Amazon, are you kidding? So with all the data they have on the service side, the do-it-yourself, but people that are buying parts for their cars, right, to do maintenance. And they now are going to get more and more used car data. They're going to get new car data. We're going to wake up one day, and these guys are going to be so enabled. In fact, Fan Jin, who's the general manager of Amazon Auto, is brilliant. One of the insights that she shared at the Presidio Group's tech conference in October, which was a remarkable event, I'd recommend anybody. But one of the things she said is, we have data points that actually let us know 240 days before somebody enters the market. I'm not saying before they buy a car, before they even enter the market. So, for dealers that are now responding to Carvana and CarMax, who said, we're not going to wait till somebody's ready to buy a car for us to go acquire the car. We're going to go out to them before they actually even go buy the car. Well, Amazon's now going, yeah, that's cute. That's adorable. I'm going to actually have signals 8 months before that. And so to your point, obviously we've always said in this business for years, in many businesses, cash is king. Data is king. And it's not a matter of if people are going to buy online. They'll buy online as soon as the process is appealing to them. Do you agree with that?
100%. And you touched on something I think super important. Amazon knows, like you said, 240 days before somebody engages. They know 240 days before you're going to go shop for your next TV, right? I mean, it's not just cars. They've got intelligence on everybody. Experian's been doing all kinds of that kind of data collection for years. There are tremendous resources out there for massive car dealer groups and for little guys because the data is available. One of the things that I hope happens, it was kind of my prediction when I was in it all the time, is that these marketplaces that come up, there's room for sellers, right? There's room for the AutoNations and the Penske's, and they're going to kind of have their own thing that they carve out. But there's also room for the guy who owns one or two or three dealerships to sell his wares as well, because it's a digital marketplace, right? And at the end of the day, these guys are going to basically say, okay, these are the terms and conditions under which I'm willing to transact, the results of which are this, which is how much upfront, how much a month, how many months. That's what influences how consumers engage in buying a car for the most part, right? Then it literally kind of levels the playing field. And unless one of the big players comes in and says, look, we're just going to buy the market, which is a race to the bottom, which doesn't do everybody good, right? Then I think dealer volume and dealer profitability will stabilize, and I think it'll be pretty good, for the whole industry. But they have to open up their mind to say, hey, look, the days of saying, why don't you come in and talk about it? We don't give prices over the phone or online. Those days are going away. Yeah.
Well, what's scary is how many dealers, we were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago with a group of dealers, but how many dealers still to this day subscribe to that theory? If you don't come in, I'm not giving you a price. If you don't come in, I'm not going to give you a value on your trade-in. Okay. No, I get that. It would take me all of 5 minutes to go to Carvana and get that. They don't ask me whether I'm buying a car or not. It'll take me 5 minutes to get it from CarMax. They don't ask me. They don't even care if I'm going to buy a car from them or not.
Right.
And, so,
and they'll give you a number on the car that you want to sell them, whether you trade it in or not.
Right. Oh, yeah. And I'll come pick it up.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I'll bring a check. So it's so interesting. It's cool because on one hand, I'm seeing more and more dealers that are moving in the right direction, but at the same time, I'm seeing dealers that, I don't know any better term, they're just going to end up being the smartest dinosaurs because maybe you'll be the last one to be extinct, but you will be extinct nonetheless, right? 45% of companies that were on the S&P 500 aren't on the S&P 500 anymore. The ones that were on the S&P 500 just 20 years ago, then they were the best of the best. So it still comes down to our ability to reinvent and rethink and be able to mostly respond to the changing expectations of customers. Fair to say in your mind, first of all, Amazon Autos, speaking of which, a mistake for dealers to not lean in on Amazon Autos at the end of the day, right? I'd like to say another answer. Because there's some dealers would want me to. I can't. That's where the data is. That's where the clients are going. And you either are going to jump on that bus or you're going to be on the other side of that fence of just put it this, forget it whether it's Amazon or Carvana. You're going to jump on so you're going to sit there and go, no, I get the fact that everyone wants easy. I'm going to stay over here at hard. I'm going to just commit to making it harder than it has to be. That's my master plan. And it doesn't matter. There are dealers that are brilliantly moving forward. Like I said, they're leveraging CDPs, right? They're already leveraging AI. Some of it's great. Some of it's, I think, is not going to live up to expectations. But they're moving forward nonetheless. And they're going to avail themselves to, as you said a little bit earlier, Rusty, to everything that's available to create the best possible outcome for their clients and for them. Yeah. But at some point, if you cannot get all the way to where a client wants to be, if you can't get to Instacart, if you can't get to Uber, and if you can't get to Amazon, nobody's going to be looking for 80 or 90% of great. They're going to be looking for great, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to have some big challenges to get to 100% of great. Not necessarily because for any other reason other than the municipalities, right? There's a lot of places that still won't, NCR paper, wet ink and stuff. It's a bit of a challenge. There will be an ecosystem, and there's a couple of guys who I used to do a lot of work with at MarketScan, not necessarily in our company, but outside of our company, clients we work with who are working on a solution or a couple solutions that handle all of it, right? And it's all, there's blockchain was a big buzzword a long time ago, and it kind of got unpopular because nobody really understood it. It sounds so much cooler than it is, but it's a great mechanism for transacting in the automotive space. And when you get to the point to where you can accommodate the whole ecosystem or the whole transaction and all of the players in the ecosystem electronically, whether it's the lending institution that holds the paper on the trade, it's the flooring company, it's the lender who's funding the new vehicle, it's the DMV, it's the aftermarket product companies and all that kind of stuff, where all this, the transaction happens, all the funds come into one environment, and when the chain nets, the dealership gets their profit, the floor plan gets paid, the trade lender gets paid, the warranty company gets paid, DMV gets paid, the sales tax gets paid. Everything goes off in one shot. When we can handle that type of a transaction, then the consumer is going to have the same type of buying experience that they have when they click and say, okay, I need this USB cable showing up in my house tomorrow. Until that exists, Amazon's not going to be the one that changes the world completely, and neither is anybody else, right? Because those elements have to be done, and they've got to be done by brilliant automotive minds in the automotive space. That's one of the things that carved out a huge slot for market scan in the GM world and in the Amazon world and all these others, is that all these big companies, it's crazy to say, but these big companies, they don't know how to calculate a transaction, right? Not necessarily perfect it, but actually calculate the whole thing, right? And a lot of them threw many, many millions of dollars in resources at it and still couldn't figure it out. And, we got lucky because we had an API for it before COVID hit, and that's what put us on the map. But, once you can calculate it, you can get the customer to say yes. Perfecting the transaction is going to take more work. And the first company that really solves that problem, they're going to be a 3 comma. They're going to be $1 billion business.
Oh, they're a $1 billion company for sure.
Just like that. Yeah.
I have at least one more question and possibly two. So, number one, speaking of blockchain, I look at blockchain. I mean, blockchain is I think is so hard for a lot of people to wrap their brains around. It is complex, but it's also brilliant in its simplicity when it comes to the way it solves things. It really is when you look at it, and that, if I have data from Meta and I've got data from Amazon, I got data from here, data from here, data from here. Those are all siloed datas, right? And we're all right now having to deal with some type of exchange, some type of integration that's going to allow me to communicate here. It's going to be batched. It's going to be lagging. It's going to all those things. Versus something that's basically putting everything in the blockchain, right? So everybody's I look at it almost like a title company, right? When you work with a title company, everything goes to the title company. And then when everybody has said, yeah, I'm okay, good. All right, great. Here's your deed, here's your money, here's your insurance. Everything goes out. Everything's secure, right? Do you agree with that?
That's exactly what it is.
So yeah. I think it's, it is very complex as far as some of it, but I think there is brilliance in it and there's simplicity, and it got a bad rap. But as much as it was getting a bad rap, there was early on, I remember 3-4 years in when it was getting a bad rap, there was already 53 different major industries, including banking and healthcare, that had fully embraced it. So
it's the foundation of all cryptocurrency.
All of it, yeah. So I think don't go to sleep on that. My last question I wanted to touch on was really, it's a big one. Ethics and responsibility. When you were on the forefront of data leadership. Think about that. I don't think I could wrap my brain around how many transactions. Forget about. I'm not even talking about write-ups. I'm talking about just deals, but it influenced millions and millions of automotive transactions. So in your mind, what is the ethical responsibilities that come with that level of influence, and how should our industry in this time when data is exploding, how do we need to rethink data transparency or consumer trust as we move forward into this next era of digital retailing?
Consistency. One of the biggest gripes that consumers have is they're told one thing, at step 1, 2, and 3. When they get to step 9, 10, 11, everything changes, right? It was $299. It was $1,500 up front, $299 a month. Then you go, well, it's $1,500 down plus fees. It's $299 plus tax. This, that, and the other, right? That disconnect between what was I told and what am I getting creates a lot of heartburn. And it also creates an imbalance in the competitive process. It'll create a big imbalance when people really go to doing stuff digitally online, right? So whatever tools the dealer uses from first point of contact to delivery of the vehicle have to be taking everything accurately into consideration, representing them properly. That way, when the consumer knows it's this much up front and this much a month, as long as the situation doesn't change, which means, okay, I don't have an 810 credit score, I got a 610, I might have lied about that, right? Which, there's ways to figure that out now too. But as long as there's transparency and consistency from what the consumer shared, then everything should be exactly the same from first quote to delivery. And when we get to where we do that, then making transactions happen online will be much easier, because you won't have things changing that require hand holding to keep the deal from blowing up. Right?
I love that. I agree with you. Again, doing business online is in many ways very, very simple, but it's also land of absolutes. I mean, there is no negotiating online. I mean, if you think about it, you go to any dealer's website, it's a single point of contact environment, and it's a one price environment. There's no back and forth. And I think to some degree, a great degree, therein lies why consumers love it. That is, it's interesting. Transparency oftentimes is associated with no negotiating, right? The minute negotiation starts to happen, it seems like transparency can be threatened in the mind of the consumer. And this is all about confidence and trust on the consumer, as you know. So as a consumer, if I pull up a website on my phone and it takes longer than 3 seconds to load, you're going to bounce. Yeah. True? You're going to bounce.
Yeah.
And that's reality. Yeah. In the world of AI, where generative engine optimization and answer engine optimization is going to rule, it already is starting to rule. And AEO is anything, hey Siri, hey Alexa, all that's going to AEO, right? And generative is all from content. And SEO is taking a little bit of a back seat to that, which is why Google and others have to pivot. But if I'm going to bounce after 3 seconds, and that's a problem, I'm looking up on AI where I should buy my car, where should I service my 2021, it's not going to give me the dealer closest to me. It's going to give me the dealer with the best ratings, the best reviews, the easiest way to schedule an appointment. Mm-hmm. And then, what you brought up is an entirely other important layer, and that is the consistency. Right now, I see this every month. This is true. I see dealers that have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 third-party platforms. They're all shooting payments out for the same Corolla or the same Civic or the same Mazda, and they're all different. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you're more than 3 seconds, I'm going to bounce. And if I see multiple payments, I'm going to bounce. And if I get a beautiful online experience with your digital retailing platform, I always will quarrel for the rest of my life. Digital retailing, stop calling it that unless you could actually retail me something online. Last time I remember, I don't go to Amazon, look for a book, buy the book, put it in the cart, pay for the cart, and then a screen says, oh, just come by the bookstore and pick it up.
And by the way, the price is different.
Oh, yeah, and the price is different. Oh, by the way, we don't have that, but we'll get it to you. Okay, that's not digital retailing, but that as it may. If I go on to that beautiful digital retailing platform that feels different as a consumer, I have transparency, I have one price, I have single point of contact. But then that all comes crashing back to earth, and I walk into a store and I feel like I'm Austin Powers. I went back 20 years in time because the person said, I'm sorry, who are you? And what were you looking for? And you did that on my website? Or they say, oh, Mr. West, wonderful to see you. Please come in. Absolutely. I see that you had your trade evaluated. Oh, I see you got your payment 349. Yeah, I got to have my manager look at that. I don't really think any of that's going to happen. Right? We didn't look at your car yet. And there's some things that came up on your credit report that's going to change a payment. I mean, we're not there yet. True?
Yeah, I think we're much closer than we were even a year ago. But
I agree, but we're not there yet. But I think it's super important for people to listen to what you're saying. Here's why. Scott Galloway, the professor of New York University's marketing department, he always said this quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but basically, it's amazing how long it takes for things to happen and how shocking how quickly they happen. Right? It's amazing how long it takes for something to change, and then shocking how quickly it happens. And I mean, your company is a great example of that. A couple times over, I can guarantee people, I'm very confident about this, that we could talk about only 8% or 12% or 15% want to go online, that thing's going to go like that to 40, 50, 60 or more the minute that we nail this. Do you agree with that?
100%.
And they're just waiting for us to get it right.
Yeah.
So it's well, listen, I've loved the conversation. I really appreciate the time you've given me. I kind of feel like I apologize in advance, but I have to have you back because there's some things that we were able to converse about in our last phone call that are just downright hilarious. Some of them are just amazing. And how, like I said, the fact that I always think about the fact, like Rusty West, how did you get here, right? The path it took for you to get right here where we're speaking to each other. There's probably so many times in the last 30 years that there is no way you could have said, oh yeah, this is how this movie is going to end, right?
Yeah. Oh, it was a very long take one.
All right. Last but not least, you are a car guy.
Oh yeah.
Of the highest order. What was the first car you ever owned?
1946 Ford two-door sport coupe.
Man, how in the heck did that happen? Because you graduated from college in 88?
Yeah.
88. So
I grew up racing motocross. I grew up on dirt bikes. I literally thought that's what I was going to do for a living. My second stint in the wheelchair ended that career. I was in high school with a second. I've been in 3 times. Last one was 2013. I don't get them on anymore. But I got new bikes every year. We were running a couple different classes, and we were driving from one motocross track back to the house. There was this old car that was sitting there, an old Ford, and my dad and I stopped, and my new bike was getting shipped. Literally, we'll probably be at the house by the time we got home, and we traded a dirt bike for it. And I got the thing dropped off, and my dad and I were going to restore it, and we got it running, and that was it. And then right before my 16th birthday, we traded it in on a 442 convertible.
Oh my God! Remember the 442 olds?
Yeah, that's not a smart first car. I got in a lot of trouble in that car.
Yeah. A variant of the Chevelle.
Yeah. 455 4-speed car. You can see.
Good car.
Oh, you woke up. I have a Great Dane, by the way. She's been snoring in my office.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I saw her kind of lean up on the desk a little bit earlier. Kind of just wanted to get into the picture. Today, Rusty, still a car guy? Still a huge car enthusiast?
Yeah. It's a bit of an addiction.
Got a few cars laying around, do you?
About 75.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. Do you have a favorite?
I've got a couple. I have a crown jewel, if you will. I've got a Mercedes CLK GTR race car. It's the only V12 Mercedes race car in private hands. I bought it September 12th of 2001 for not much, and it's a pretty big money car now. And then I'm a Porsche fanatic, so I got a bunch of different Porsches, but I've got a real oddball car that's called a 962 CR. In the late 80s and early 90s, Vern Chupin won Le Mans a bunch of times in 962s, and he talked to his sponsor, and invested into building 50 streetcars. And so in 1991, these cars had a $1.6 million window sticker.
Wait.
Yeah.
In 91?
In 91, $1.6 million window sticker. And he got the money to build 50 cars. He built 3 and then took the rest of the money, went racing, won Le Mans again, and got his ass sued off and lost everything. And there was 3 cars that were done. And I own the prototype. I own the first one of the 3.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. And it's a miserable car to drive, but man, is it pretty.
Awesome. So you must, Chip Perry?
Huh?
Chip Perry, fellow Porsche fanatic.
So Chip is a 356 Porsche. He likes the older stuff.
Yes,
I know
he
Chip
does.
real well. And Chip and I are good friends. He's a big car fanatic. He's got a beautiful collection.
In his, in North Carolina, I believe it is, isn't it?
Yeah. He's also got mostly Porsches. He has a very early Carmen Ghia convertible, Volkswagen Carmen Ghia convertible that is perfect. When I say perfect, it is a brand new perfect restoration. And when I met Chip, I was in Atlanta, and I was getting. I showed up for an in-studio interview with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Sure.
And Jim and I are good buddies. And so
Great
I showed
guy.
up there, and Chip was there. And my interview was before Chip's. And so I'm in there, and we were talking. I knew him, but I knew him from a business side. He's a customer of ours, but I didn't know him real well. And when I got there, it's Atlanta. You never know what the weather like, and all of a sudden it looks like it's going to really start pouring rain, and Chip's roof is down. And I'm like, man, I don't know this guy, and I don't like people touch my car, but this thing's brand new. I don't want it to fill up with water. So I sat there and figured out how to put the top up on this old Carmen Ghia, and I got the top done, and the windows rolled up, and went banged on the door and said, hey, look, can you guys let Chip know that I hope I did it right. I didn't want it to flood. I hope he's not mad at me for putting his roof up. And I got a call from him as I'm driving out. My wife was with me, and we were headed somewhere to go get something to eat or whatever. And he's like, man, thank you so much. This thing was in the shop for 4 years getting restored. I just picked it up. I'd have been heartbroken.
No.
And I'm like, well, the top works good. They did a nice job. So, and then after that, we became really good buddies.
Oh my gosh. I remember being with Chip. I don't know if I've ever been with Chip in a new car. I don't think Chip drives anything but beautiful classic cars. He was actually driving I want to say it must have been around somewhere between a 1989 and 1991 Mercedes S-Class. So I think it was maybe an SEC. It probably would have been like a 450 or 560 SEC, but yeah, I mean, the guy is obviously a legend in our industry. And I love this. There's so many reasons to love this business, isn't there, Rusty? And one of them is that so many people in this business, you included, Chip, I'm certainly that way. We truly, genuinely love cars. Everything about the car business.
Yeah, in anything, it's I've got I grew up a big Pontiac fan. I love the Trans Ams and the GTOs and stuff. Yeah. And I picked up a 70 Trans Am, 4-speed non-AC car that's matching numbers. I'm a third owner. It's got 16,000 miles on it. And it looks like a new car, and there's literally nothing to it, right? I mean, if you turn the key, the thing starts. You don't have to put a computer on it or anything, and it drives fine, So
I remember when you used to be able to literally, you felt like you could literally climb into the engine compartment and work on your car. Yeah. And we had space on space on space. I had a black, I had the Firebird Trans Am with the gold. Yeah, the black one with the gold. Yeah.
I had a 77.
Yeah, same.
I had 79 10th anniversary. I had an 84 15th anniversary, and I just found one a little while back, and I've got a shop in California still, and we're almost finished restoring it. But yeah.
I had a Mustang matching number, convertible, 64 and a half, I believe that, but matching number, convertible with factory air conditioning in that car and the pony interior. Yeah. And I bought it with 43,000 original miles on it, and it was pristine. But, for me, I don't have the garage space or anything. So I love them. I drive them. And then after about a year and a half, I'm like, okay, I don't have the space or the time. I'm going to move and get on to the next one, the next one, the next one. But listen, what a throw. I want to have you back, amongst other things, because I know your next chapter, you alluded to it, and you can't get into anything specific, but your next chapter has nothing to do with automotive.
Nothing to do with automotive. everything to do with solving a
Another big problem.
and aggregating massive amounts of data. I'm a data guy, and so this one's I think got really good legs. It's been a fun project. I tried to retire. I went crazy. Got involved with the air show business, which is not my thing, right? I mean, the philanthropy part of it is my thing for sure. Dealing with every governmental agency on the planet is not my thing. It's
shocking,
but we pull it off, right? I mean, they've been great to work with. It's just it's a lot of red tape to get stuff done. But I sat down, and I'd never done a mobile app before, and never programmed on a Macintosh, but we never had a Mac before. So I bought a Mac and learned a new language and wrote an app. And
Flutter? Flutter?
No, I wrote it in a language called Swift.
Oh yeah, Swift, sure.
And it's a lot like JavaScript. It's an object-oriented language. It's good. It's very, very Apple specific. And eventually, I'll write an Android version of it, but I'll do Apple first. And then the back end of it is Firebase with a bunch of AI stuff for normalizing a bunch of cool shit. So,
all right. So we got to ask you as we wrap up. After all these years, and now you've been exposed to the world of Apple. Going forward, PC or Mac? I mean, any old developer, man, is hardcore PC.
Yeah, so I love developing in the PC environment. I don't think it's PC or Mac based. It's
languages,
cross-platform. There's so many. I think Java-based languages, which most of this stuff is very, kind of has that underlying. That's where it's going to end up. AI is going to change the way people develop software. It certainly changed the way I did. Right, I'd never ever touched AI from a development stack standpoint until long after I sold the business. And when I started programming this thing, I get in it and, you kind of hack your way through it. And then all of a sudden you discover some AI tools. One of them is Grok, which is,
Grok.
Grok's Elon Musk's version of ChatGPT, but is super heavy focused on development. And Grok 4.0 develops at a PhD level development. Right. So I need this, right? And it doesn't always get it right, but it gives you enough and gets you kind of close. So I was able to build an app that realistically, if I was very, very proficient in Swift, probably would have taken me 2 years. And I was able to write it in 6 months. And
remarkable.
It's extreme.
I think undoubtedly it's going to that's going to change everything, because again, we talk about when the technology becomes brilliant, you get to focus on hiring the right people that have the caring and the passion to deliver a spectacular experience. And it becomes about that. They don't have to worry about duct taping and band-aiding something together to create that experience. I think we're in a whole different world now to where similarly people are going to be able to rely or be able to focus on the creativity of their mind of what problem they want to solve, and less about how they're going to solve it. Because when you see something like Grok 4.0, or you see even programs like Cursor, which is allowing people, and then you leverage AI in it, where you get literally multiple platforms of AI working simultaneously to create something. You could create a platform at least to test it and validate it in weeks.
It's crazy.
Easily.
And then
it's crazy.
So, one of the things that's interesting in the automotive space, the data sets are so discombobulated, right? And what put us on the map was normalizing it, right? Literally getting to where we take all this disorganized information from all these disorganized sources or discombobulated sources, if you will, and make sense of it in a manner where we could do stuff with it on a very consistent basis. When you start aggregating data, when you go down the path of aggregating data and you start from a normalized, organized, related data set, right? When you populate all this information, you can throw AI tools at it and say, hey, what would you do with this, right? And I've got my vision of what we can do with it. There's a bunch of different verticals that we can use this data for, but the AI engines, like Gemini will look at this thing and it'll say, hey, here, boom, this community could use this community could use this community could use this, right? And the one thing I learned in my previous business life is you don't ever sell your data, you license access to it.
That's right.
So
that's right. Well, Rusty, I knew it was going to be good. I knew I was going to have a blast. It was even better than I could have imagined. I can't thank you enough for your time. I will tell you, I've had such a good time here that I just found one more thing and one more thing and one more thing. I'm literally, for anybody listening, you're listening to part 2 of the Rusty West interview, because I got to split these things in half to part 1, part 2. I'm going to leave it to my brilliant team to figure out how to do that. But this has been such an extraordinarily enjoyable conversation. Appreciate so much what you did in the industry to transform the industry. I'm so much looking forward to hearing details on what's next when it's able to be revealed, probably sometime early next year, right?
Yeah, as soon as the patents are as soon as the patents are applied for, then we'll deploy it. So
so I'll be looking forward to that. And in the meantime, I'll make sure that people know how to stay in touch, connect with you on LinkedIn. But it's just an extraordinary story in retail automotive, an extraordinary entrepreneurial story. It's an extraordinary story about your dedication to philanthropy and giving back, remembering where you came from, and about reinvention, where everything went right and then everything went wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
Right?
I got pretty good at chewing on shoelaces for a while.
Oh my God. Oh man, I had those stories. But
I have this saying. Actually, I'm not a tattoo guy, but I got a tattoo when we sold the business, but I've had this saying that says, I've been kicked in the teeth so many times I acquired a taste for shoelaces, and there's a shoelace element in the tattoo because of it. So
I love it. Well, I'll tell you what, it is extraordinary on extraordinary and extraordinary, and you, my friend, are just a gentleman of the highest order, and just a pleasure to hang out with. And I look forward to the next opportunity we have to be together and sitting down and talking cars and everything else that pops up. So thank you. Appreciate it so much.
Listen, I appreciate it. This seems like it only went for 5 minutes.
Oh my God, me too. For everybody listening, thank you so much for listening, especially if you're listening to part 1 or part 2, if you're listening to the whole extended version at one time. I trust that you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please share this episode out. I mean, this is one of the great stories in our industry. If you're a car person, dealer, associate, manager, entrepreneur, trying to figure out how to solve a big problem anywhere, this is such a good one to share out. Please share this one out to anybody and everybody. Always would appreciate you subscribing, downloading, and please leave a review for me, or if it's for Rusty, I'll pass it along. And I just can't thank you enough. So I look forward to seeing you, Rusty, again. Look forward to everybody else seeing you next time on the David Spizak Show. Thanks so much.